Having a healthy and adaptive relationship with our emotion is an incredibly powerful tool for cultivating good mental health. In fact, there are certain therapies that at their core focuses on the way that we relate to our emotions, like dialectical behavior therapy, where they believe that a lot of the problems arise because of a negative relationship to emotions that are, aversive or uncomfortable to bear. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the things that we do on a day-to-day that can actually lead to poor emotion regulation and sort of a negative relationship with our emotions, and talk about some ways that we can start cultivating a more positive relationship with our emotions. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Dr. Parky Lau. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been studying and practicing evidence-based mental health for the better part of a decade. I'd love to share some of that information with you. So one of the first habits that affect negatively our relationship with emotions is suppressing it immediately when we feel something. So if you're anything like me, anytime you feel anger or anxiety or discomfort, you almost kind of like push it away and disassociate from it. Like you don't actually try to sit with it and experience it or listen to its wisdom. You just say, oh, like there's an emotion. I'm just going to bottle it up and then like never play with it again. And although the strategy of suppressing our emotions can be helpful maybe in the moment, it doesn't really allow us to listen to the wisdom of our emotions. Like if we do feel anger, it means that there was something in the situation that kind of affected our boundaries or made us feel like something was unfair. And by us pushing it away, it might lead to resentment down the road. And it can also make it hard that at some point when the emotions blow up, then you don't really know how to regulate it well enough to be able to actually act effectively in the situation. Now, micro habit number two, on the other hand, are the people who are a little bit under-regulated. So the people who kind of almost like feel too strongly and then immediately use their emotions to act upon something that isn't effective towards their goals. Like this could be someone who feels anger and then immediately tries fighting or yelling or screaming, which even if it makes sense in the moment, can lead to, of course, poor interpersonal relationships or poor effectiveness in their day-to-day in the working environment. So when we kind of act on these sort of negative emotions really strongly and powerfully in the moment and react instead of respond, we also lose the sort of ability to actually listen to where it helps us, but also maybe avoid it sort of starting to negatively affect our lives. Micro habit number three is fully invalidating our emotion by saying, I shouldn't have had that emotion. Like, I shouldn't have felt angry in this situation, or I shouldn't feel depressed because someone else has it much worse. And that sort of invalidation of our emotion can actually lead to us, of course, over time feeling worse because we're not kind of listening to ourselves. We're not feeding our own sense of self-esteem by saying, how I feel doesn't make sense. So it's important to be able to kind of validate what is valid about the situation, that just because someone has it worse doesn't mean you don't get to sort of feel a certain way, or if someone is unfair to you, even if they've been nice to you before, that doesn't mean you can't feel hurt in that situation or upset that things were a little bit unfair. So being able to say, hey, like what I'm feeling makes sense in some capacity and validate what is valid in the situation. And habit number four is that you can't feel two opposing emotions or have a complicated emotional response to a certain situation. And this is actually a very common term in dialectical behavior therapy known as a dialectic, where you can technically have two seemingly opposite and mutually exclusive experiences at the same time. Like, for example, I can be happy that my friend went off to, the job of their dreams in another place. And I can also be sad at the same time because maybe I don't get to spend as much time with them. So I can be happy and sad. And habit number five, which is kind of similar to what I've been talking about, is not listening to our emotions in the first place and what it's trying to tell us. So all of our emotions are trying to tell us something. Anxiety tells us there may be a threat around. Happiness means maybe our goals and our values are being met. Sadness means that we've lost something. Guilt means that maybe we've done something that isn't consistent with what we believe is important, and therefore we need to apologize. All of our emotions says something, even for example, anger, where it tells us maybe one of our boundaries have been crossed or our goal has been thwarted by something. It tells us something very important. So in terms of cultivating our relationship with emotions, there's a couple of things that I think can be really helpful. Number one is understand where you are in sort of the teeter-totter of emotions. Are you someone who is a bit over-regulated, where you're someone who kind of like pushes away emotions, tries not to feel anything? Or are you someone who's under-regulated, where when you have an emotion, you feel it like a 10 out of 10 and you can't help but kind of like engage in whatever the emotion is telling us to do? So if you're somebody who's a little bit more overregulated, then one thing that can be really helpful is to sit with emotions when they arise. So when you do notice the anger, try not to push it away immediately. Try to sit within and kind of cultivate and allow yourself to feel the anger or feel the sadness. Maybe where you're watching sort of a really sad movie and you're noticing you want to cry. And normally you'd be like, oh my God, like I don't want to cry. So I'm just gonna like blank out and disassociate. Instead, see if you can just allow yourself to feel those emotions. And one of the movies that I often find actually makes me feel, kind of sad is Click. It's by Adam Sandler. I don't know why, but that particular movie always gets me. But, for you, when you do notice these emotions, especially the ones that are uncomfortable, to allow yourself to sit with them. And interestingly, these aversive emotions don't have to be quote unquote negative in the sort of traditional sense. For some people, it can actually be scary to feel other types of emotions like excitement or joy. Like for some reason, it's kind of embarrassing to do so, or they worry that if I feel joy right now, what if I feel sad later? So it's almost like scary to feel hopeful. So in those cases, if you are somebody who struggles even with positive emotions, to see if you can sit with those emotions too. On the other hand, if you're somebody who's a bit more underregulated and you feel your emotions really powerfully and it's hard for you to stop those emotions in the moment, it may be helpful for you to practice distress tolerance and engage in strategies to sit with your emotions and try and reduce them. So maybe engaging in some intense exercise or paced breathing, splashing your face with some cold water, something to allow yourself to say, hey, like when I have big emotions, I can engage and manage with them without necessarily just completely listening to them and blowing up in the moment. And while you're listening to emotions, you want to see where it is valid and where it is not. So one of the strategies that we typically use in DBT or dialectical behavior therapy is something called checking the facts. Does it make sense for me to feel what I feel in this moment? Like, for example, if there is a bear around, it makes perfect sense that I should be pretty anxious and therefore should listen to what the anxiety says. Or if I did do something wrong by my friend and I feel guilty, my guilt is, very valid. So I should probably apologize, listen to what the guilt is saying. Or on the other hand, if it doesn't fit the situation, then we want to act opposite to the emotion. Like if I feel this intense fear about sending an email to, a colleague, that may or may not fit the situation very well. So I might, instead of listening to the anxiety of like not sending it or checking it 500 times, I should just send it and see what would happen. So we want to kind of, in some ways, check the facts. Does the emotion fit the facts of the situation? If it does, go into problem solving mode, listen to the emotion. On the other hand, if it doesn't fit the facts or it's not particularly effective, then we should probably not necessarily listen to the emotion, at least to its totality. So hopefully this video was helpful to learn a little bit more about how we can at least start cultivating a better relationship with our emotions. This is certainly a journey for me too, in terms of being able to sit with my emotions and being able to listen to them without feeling kind of this overwhelm or this desire to suppress. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.